It's an interesting day in the world of Magic the Gathering, as Wizards of the Coast has just announced multiple card bannings across multiple formats. And one of these bannings is quite unusual.
Magic. I am a wizard! History. I'm an old wizard! The Magic Historian. My bones hurt.
Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles, my friends. I hope the day finds you well, because we have gathered to talk about the newest wave of bannings. Now, before we do that, real quick, the newest installment of the Brothers War lore has come out on my Fantasy Geographic channel. You can check that out. Also, I've done a bunch of fun openings over on my Hatcher channel. So if you're looking for magical good times, you can check out either of those at the end of the video. Now, let's dive in talking about these bannings. We're gonna start with Standard and the Meat Hook Massacre. I told you guys back in May that this might be a thing, where the Meat Hook Massacre was on the list of candidates for a fat banning. And Wizards of the Coast has come through and decided that that is the case. So, here's what they had to say. As is often the case, the standard card pool rotation with the release of Dominaria United caused quite a shakeup, with cards from the new set finding their places into decks, and many of last year's cards shifting context within the new metagame. As the format has settled into place, the color black has proven powerful and prolific, and makes up the foundation of many of the top decks. Despite that commonly shared color, we're seeing good diversity among competitive decks and strategies, and player engagement with the format has been healthy. It does make you wonder. I mean, they're saying that it's healthy, but at the same time, we do have a new set that's coming very soon, and they still feel the need to take action. Remember, we live in the time now where Wizards doesn't do quarterly ban announcements, right? They basically do bans when they feel that they are warranted. So even though Brothers War is coming, they feel the need to step in now and give Meat Hook the boot. And that means it's obviously been more oppressive than they're letting on. This whole sort of, yeah, you know what, the format, it's been healthy. Has it really 100%? Anyways, moving on with what they said here. To provide a small push against the colors black's play rate among competitive decks, we're choosing to ban one black card. And obviously, we all know how this works. Wizards of the Coast will never ban cards from the newest set that are the problem if they have a rare or mythic rare symbol on them. If there's a common or uncommon that somehow manages to cause a problem, then yeah, they'll get rid of that one no problem. But when it's a mythic rare, when it's your money mythic rare, like Meat Hook Massacre was pretty much carrying the entire value of that Innistrad set on its back. So by kicking it out of Standard, Wizards is effectively kicking the value of that Innistrad set down into the gutter as well, right? It may recover a bit here and there on other singles, but Meat Hook Massacre is definitely getting slammed here. So, to continue with what they're saying, we discussed several different options, as no single black card stood out as a major power outlier played by all decks containing black. So ultimately, this is an admission as well that, okay, there are a ton of powerful black cards on the level of Meat Hook Massacre. We didn't even know which one we should take out. Yeah, right. They looked at things like Sheoldred and went, wow, Sheoldred's pretty pushed, isn't it? We made this crazy card with a lot of power for a really good mana cost, and it's really causing a lot of problems, but it's hard to tell. Could this one be a big problem? No, it must be the one that we printed like a year ago and that we've sold all the boxes out of our warehouse, right? So yeah, I mean, it's just as good as any of the other choices. So keep your eyes out, guys. I think that black is gonna get, things are gonna get ugly. Anyways, to continue with what they're saying, ultimately we decided that banning the Meat Hook Massacre was the best choice. Yeah, financially. Okay, but their actual reasoning is, as it's one of the most powerful black cards in the format, is especially powerful against specific archetypes, decks relying on a lot of small creatures, kind of echoes the stuff that I was saying, oh, I don't know, all the way back in May, when I made a video decrying Meat Hook Massacre as a genuine problem that would require banning. But unfortunately, unfortunately, the card hadn't been in print for long enough, so Wizards was just like, no, that's okay. I get kind of tired of this dance, I have to admit, where we go through this thing where Wizards makes these push cards and then closes their eyes to the problem for as long as they can, right? We see the silly nonsense they pull with Arena, where they go, well, Arena allows us to avoid this problem of cards being too powerful by being able to change them and whatever. And then when it comes down to them making new Arena rares and them going, oh, these are too powerful, just ban this other card that makes it work. And it's like, but you said the format would just change and you wouldn't ban cards. We meant we wouldn't ban rares that we had to give you wild cards and stuff for. We're perfectly fine with not actually caring about the formats. That's what it turns into. That is the most frustrating part of their format management system. It's basically like this. Standard catches on fire. They watch Standard burn. They're just Nero with their fiddle, just watching it burn and checking the warehouse as the boxes head out. And then they're finally like, have we sold off all of our stock? Oh, you know what? We just realized this card's actually a genuine problem, guys. So we're stepping in now to fix it. And we didn't know which one would be the problem. But since we've sold all this, Meat Hook Massacre is definitely the problem. It's incredibly aggravating to play this game over and over, where they just go, we set it on fire. I mean, their new design philosophy is called fire. It's doing what it says. Anyways, back on track with what it says here. So it's saying, oh, it's amazing. They even actually finished this part off. I can't believe they say this. And Meat Hook Massacre has had its time to shine in Standard for over a year. They're basically saying, like, in the most corporate way, yeah, we let it run its course, bro. Anybody who's gonna complain about us banning it, we know it's really strong. You got to play with this broken toy for long enough until we got our money, so shut your yaps. That's what that's saying. It continues. With the Brothers' War on the horizon, we anticipate the new cards entering the format to provide tools for other decks and color combinations. In the meantime, we expect this little shakeup will help keep Standard enjoyable and trending towards an even healthier spot going forward as the card pool expands. I want you to think about the logic behind this. Here's what they're saying at the exact same time. They're saying, yo, Brothers' War is on the horizon, and we're anticipating a bunch of new cards entering into the format and shaking things up. And it's like, oh, you do you? So then why exactly is it that you have to get rid of Meat Hook Massacre if a bunch of cards are coming to shake things up? Is it that the cards that are coming to shake things up are going to shake things up by making black even stronger and shaking that mountain higher while the other ones get lower? Because I have a sneaking suspicion that when you ban a hugely expensive secondary market card that you've printed in 2 sets, because remember, this was in double feature as well, I have a feeling that you do that for a reason, not just on a lark. Like what? It's not even a month before Brothers' War comes out. They wanted to get ahead of this before we start seeing whatever's in the spoilers that's going to make it very obvious that playing black and Meat Hook Massacre would have been even crazier. And don't think for a second that Wizards didn't know what they were doing when they made Meat Hook, okay? Because we're going to go into the next banning now, and this one is it's just a perfect example of how Wizards of the Coast knows what to do and what not to do, and will intentionally do things they shouldn't, going, maybe we can score some more cash even if it mucks up the game. Anyways, we're moving on to the modern format. Now, Yorion Sky Nomad is the banned card we're going to talk about here. The Accursed Companions, a bane on Magic the Gathering. A terrible mechanic that never should have been designed. And you want to know what's hilarious? If you actually go back through the archives of Magic the Gathering articles, you will find proof that many years, we're talking decades ago, the companion concept was tried, and the feedback that was given was that it was absolutely nightmarish and not to be done. And yet they shunted it into Ikoria, and lo and behold, it became such a huge problem, they had to fundamentally alter the entire mechanic of the card. And even altering that mechanic, companions proved to be so it's almost like, whoa, so wait, I can just start with an 8th card in my hand for free every game that can't be disrupted by my opponent? And it's like, yup, what? Like, even the fixes, it's just so inherently broken in terms of advantage, right? Now, let's talk about the reasoning they give behind Yorion's ban here. It says, Modern's been in a healthy place since the last banned and restricted update, with good diversity among archetypes and even the most popular competitive decks occupying a relatively small slice of the metagame, about 5 to 6% each on Magic Online. However, as tabletop Modern play continues to rebound, since the height of the pandemic, we've decided to enact a change that we've been considering for some time by banning Yorion Sky Nomad. Yorion most commonly appears as a companion in 4-color Omnath decks, which show a strong win rate and, according to our matchup data, are likely to continue to rise in popularity. In addition to game balance concerns with the deck, we're also factoring in the physical dexterity requirements. This is where, at the beginning of the video, I said one of these bannings is unusual. This is unusual when it comes down to physical dexterity issues. So that is, I just was surprised to see that in here. Anyhow, it says, we're factoring in physical dexterity requirements of playing with a large deck for tabletop. We're wary of the metagame reaching a point where players are playing the deck because of its perceived strength and win rate, despite not enjoying how cumbersome, that word itself apparently cumbersome for me right now, how cumbersome it can be to operate. So this is basically saying that the 80 card decks are too big for some people's tiny little hands. Now, I have gigantic, manly hands that I use to crush the skulls of my enemies. So I don't really have this problem. I play big, fat, honking 300 card decks sometimes. So for me, whatever, right? It's interesting, though, to note that Wizards is factoring that in. And I don't think it's a terrible decision. I think that you having to decide, like, honestly, my lady has a disability, and I genuinely recognize how something as simple as having to shuffle a deck that is 33% bigger than a regular deck would present a challenge. So you're stuck in the position where you're like, yo, I can't play as competitive a deck because my physical abilities don't allow me to. And your physical abilities, aside perhaps from your intelligence level, shouldn't really determine your ability to play Magic. So on that front, I can say I'm 100% with Wizards. I think it's great as a concern going forwards. They should be more aware of this when they design cards that will be strong enough to make it into the formats. Be aware of the way that it will impact people, right? So it says, while these physical dexterity issues exist to a lesser degree in other formats like Pioneer, Modern specifically entails more shuffling and other physical card manipulation because of the deep card pool of card selection spells, so tutors that let you look for things, fetch lands, and so on. Cards encouraging large decks like Battle of Wits have existed in the past, but they're always on the fringes of competitive play rather than one of the strongest decks. And that's true. You don't really see 250 card Battle of Wits decks tearing it up. So, another and probably more important point, really, is we've also heard from many players that the repeated triggers caused by Yorion and many of the cards surrounding it can lead to repetitive gameplay patterns and long games with lots of downtime between the other players' actions. That makes perfect sense, right? If Yorion leaves the board with a bunch of your permanents, and all of your permanents to get you maximum advantage keep coming back with come into play triggers, you have to stack all those triggers, resolve all those triggers, change any life totals, search up any cards, do all of that stuff. And it can be very tedious to sit there while your opponent fiddles around and you do nothing. Now, I look at this as the Sensei's Divining Top problem. If you don't know, back in the day, we had the top. For 1 mana, you could look at the top 3 cards of your deck. Now, you could do this at instant speed and for 1 mana. So it led to obnoxious situations where you're playing against some Magoo idiot who pays 1 mana, looks at the top 3 cards of his deck, spends like 30 seconds figuring out what order to put them in, finally puts them back on his deck, lays a land, plays a spell, forgets the order of the cards on his deck, and then looks at the top 3 cards of his deck again, stares at them for a while, doesn't change the order, puts them down, tells you to go, you draw your card, in the middle of his turn, he inexplicably activates the top again, and then at the end of your turn, and it's like, what are you doing? This is not how you play Magic. Stop it, please. So Divining Top was a nightmare for that kind of nonsense. And Yorion, while not exactly the same, because it's like, yo, it leaves and it comes back. On the other hand, it creates a longer period of time where you're sitting there twiddling your thumbs. So this Yorion ban makes absolute perfect sense, right? Now, we're going to move on to the other formats. Let's talk about Pioneer. So, no changes in Pioneer. Looks to be in a good place as they head to the regional qualifiers season throughout November and December. We're seeing a wide variety of strategies employed by the most popular decks. The most played deck on Magic Online is Rakdos Midrange, with about 13% metagame share. None of the top 20 most played decks have a non-mirror match win rate of more than 53%, and in general, we've heard a lot of positivity from players about the state of the format. I haven't actually heard any grumbling about Pioneer overall, so this seems like it's probably about right. We'll continue to keep an eye on the health of the format, especially as it undergoes more competitive pressure with the regional championship qualifiers. As things currently stand, we don't anticipate any changes before or during that season. And when it comes to Legacy, not only do they say there's no changes, they say the Legacy metagame's looking healthy. Since we banned Ragavan back in January, the most popular deck, Is It Delver, has had its win rate trend downwards. According to Magic Online data, it represents about 9% of the field and has an overall non-mirror match win rate of 52%, with both positive and negative matchups against the next 10 most played decks. So, they're just going to leave it alone because cards like Unlicensed Hearse, Fable the Mirror Breaker, Ledger Shredder, Leyline Binding. I guess, honestly, like, I think that Fable the Mirror Breaker, that thing is causing some serious waves. That's one to keep your eyes on, for sure. I mean, Unlicensed Hearse, Ledger Shredder, Leyline, yeah, I feel like Fable the Mirror Breaker is the one you want to be keeping your eye on. Now, turn into Vintage. We think Vintage is in a relatively good spot. I mean, how much data can you get on it? Magic Online data shows greater archetype diversity in Vintage? Okay, all right. Displacer Kitten and Vodalian Hex Catchers are examples that feature prominently in their respect. I mean, yeah, Vodalian Hex Catcher is insane for Merfolk deck, right? And the new Boseiju who endures are finding a home in a variety of decks. We're aware that many of the current top decks make powerful use of Tinker and are often categorized together, but within that category there's a good amount of diversity in terms of how those decks can be built. With the play patterns they follow, we're also seeing healthy amounts of good stuff decks, Vengevine variants, Workshop variants in the metagame. Overall, we think Vintage is in a good place right now and don't anticipate the need for changes soon. So that wraps up all of the announcements. These bans make sense to me. Like I said, brand new Brothers War lore. Go check that out. If you didn't know, there's 4 hours worth of Brothers War lore, so you can get up to speed for the upcoming Brothers War set. Check it out. The story is epic. You're not going to believe it. And over on my other channel, I've been opening a bunch of Unfinity and other Magic and having a great time. So choose your adventure, my friends. I will see you there. In the meantime, thank you to all of my patrons. You guys are the best. And to everyone I say, I will see you all for the next video.